I never planned to reveal my success to my family. For years, I let them believe I was struggling with my tiny shop while quietly building one of the largest financial empires in New York. But my sister Sophia's constant mockery finally forced my hand that Christmas night. The evening started like any other family gathering at my parents' Upper East Side townhouse. Designer outfits, expensive wine, and the usual competition over who had achieved more this year. I deliberately wore a simple black dress from Target, playing my expected role as the family disappointment. "Olivia, darling." My mother's voice carried that familiar note of carefully masked disappointment as I walked in. We were just discussing Sophia's latest promotion at Sterling and Pierce. She's now Senior Vice President of Operations. I smiled politely, remembering the confidential documents on my desk, showing that Sterling and Pierce was actually one of my recent acquisitions, though that particular detail wasn't public yet. "Congratulations, Sophia." "That's wonderful." Sophia, impeccable in her Prada suit, barely glanced up from her phone. "Thanks. How's that little vintage shop of yours doing? Still making ends meet?" If she only knew that the little vintage shop was just a front, a small piece of real estate I kept as cover while running Atlas Financial Group, a $50 billion investment firm that controlled nearly half of Wall Street's major players. But I just shrugged, maintaining my facade. "We're doing fine." The tiny vintage clothing store in Brooklyn had started as a genuine business 10 years ago, right after I graduated from Harvard Business School. While my family pushed me to take a respectable position at a big firm like my sister, I had different plans. I used the store as my base, while quietly building Atlas Financial from the ground up. "Just fine?" My father raised an eyebrow, swirling his 20-year-old scotch. "Sophia's division handled $3 billion in transactions last quarter alone. Maybe it's time you considered getting a real job, sweetheart. I'm sure Sophia could put in a good word for you at Sterling and Pierce." I bit back a laugh, thinking about the meeting scheduled for tomorrow where Sterling and Pierce's board would learn about their new ownership. Instead, I said, "Thanks, Dad, but I'm happy where I am." Sophia snorted delicately. "Of course you are. Some people just lack ambition. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business." The irony was almost too much. Just that morning, I had closed a deal worth more than Sterling and Pierce's entire market cap. But here I sat, letting my sister lecture me about real business. "Remember when Olivia actually went to Harvard Business School?" my mother added, shaking her head. "All that potential wasted on a little shop. At least Sophia made something of herself." The doorbell rang, interrupting what was sure to be another recap of my supposed failures. My mother brightened immediately. "Oh, that must be Marcus. Sophia, your boss said he might stop by, didn't he?" Marcus Evans, CEO of Sterling and Pierce, was indeed supposed to make an appearance. What my family didn't know was that he was here at my request, not Sophia's. After years of hiding my success, I had finally decided it was time for a change. The mounting takeover of Sterling and Pierce had provided the perfect opportunity. Sophia straightened her designer dress, clearly eager to impress her CEO. "Yes, Marcus mentioned he tried to drop in. He's been such a wonderful mentor to me." The household staff ushered Marcus into the dining room. He was exactly as I remembered from our board meetings, tall, distinguished, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. But while my family saw Sterling and Pierce's powerful CEO, I saw a man who now answered to me. Sophia jumped up immediately. "Marcus, I'm so glad you could make it. Let me introduce you to my family." But Marcus's eyes had already found me, and the look of recognition was immediate. He stepped forward, hand extended, completely ignoring Sophia's attempt at introductions. "Ms. Reynolds," he said formally, using my professional name. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." The room fell silent. Sophia's smile froze on her face. "Hello, Marcus," I replied calmly. "Merry Christmas." "Wait," Sophia interrupted, confusion evident in her voice. "How do you know my sister?" Marcus looked genuinely puzzled. "Your sister?" He glanced between us. "I apologize. I had no idea Ms. Reynolds was your sister. She's the CEO of Atlas Financial Group, our new owner." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers, crashing to the floor. Sophia's face had gone completely white. And my father, he just stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Owner?" Sophia whispered. "That's impossible. Olivia runs a vintage clothing store." I smiled, finally letting my carefully maintained facade drop. "Actually, Sophia, I own quite a bit more than that, including, as of tomorrow morning, Sterling and Pierce." The vintage store had been my cover for years, allowing me to build my empire away from my family's judgmental eyes. While they mocked my little shop, I was quietly becoming one of the most powerful figures in finance. Atlas Financial Group, named after my childhood fascination with Greek mythology, now controlled over $50 billion in assets. Sophia sank back into her chair, her perfectly maintained composure crumbling. But you're just? You run a shop in Brooklyn." "The shop was a front," I explained, feeling a weight lift as I finally spoke the truth. I needed somewhere quiet to work while building Atlas. Somewhere no one would look too closely at what I was really doing. My father found his voice first. "Atlas Financial Group. My God, they're behind half the major acquisitions on Wall Street. They just bought out Richardson Brothers last month for $12 billion. $13 billion, I corrected gently. And yes, that was us. My mother's hand flew to her throat, fingering her pearls nervously. "But all these years, why didn't you tell us?" I looked around the table at their shocked faces, remembering every dismissive comment, every mockery of my little shop, every comparison to Sophia's corporate success. "Would you have believed me?" I asked quietly. "You were so convinced I was wasting my potential, so sure I was a failure. It was easier to let you think what you wanted while I built something on my own terms." Marcus cleared his throat awkwardly. "I should mention that the official announcement about Sterling and Pierce goes out tomorrow morning. The board approved the acquisition an hour ago." Sophia made a small choking sound. You bought my company?" "Actually," I corrected her, "I bought your company 3 months ago through a series of shell corporations. Tomorrow, it just becomes public knowledge." I turned to Marcus. "I trust everything is prepared for the transition." He nodded quickly. "Yes, Ms. Reynolds. All the paperwork is ready for your signature first thing tomorrow." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of shocked silence and awkward attempts at conversation. My family struggled to reconcile their image of me, the disappointing daughter with the little vintage shop, with the reality of who I had become. My sister barely spoke another word, her earlier confidence shattered by the revelation that her unsuccessful sister now owned her company. As I prepared to leave, my father finally approached me, his expression a mix of confusion and dawning respect. "Olivia, I don't understand. Why maintain the pretense all these years? Why let us think you were struggling?" I paused at the door, thinking carefully about my answer. "Because, Dad, Success isn't about impressing others or living up to their expectations. It's about building something meaningful on your own terms. And sometimes the best way to do that is to let people underestimate you. I stepped out into the cold December night, leaving my stunned family behind. Tomorrow, the world would learn that Atlas Financial Group had acquired Sterling and Pierce. Tomorrow, my sister would discover what it meant to actually work for me. But tonight, I had finally shed the weight of my family's disapproval, and it felt better than any business deal I'd ever closed. Little did they know, this was just the beginning of the changes I had planned. The vintage shop might have been my cover story, but it had taught me something valuable. Appearances can be deceiving, and the quiet ones often hold the most power. As I drove home to my penthouse apartment, another secret my family knew nothing about, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about revealing your true worth to those who never believed in you in the first place. The morning after Christmas, I sat in my real office, the entire top floor of a gleaming skyscraper overlooking Manhattan. The wall-to-wall windows offered a spectacular view of the city I now partially owned, a far cry from the tiny vintage shop in Brooklyn where my family thought I spent my days. My assistant Emma walked in, tablet in hand. The Sterling and Pierce announcement goes live in 10 minutes. Also, your sister has tried to call 17 times since 6 a.m. I smiled, remembering Sophia's face when she learned the truth last night. Any messages? Mostly variations of "we need to talk," and "you can't do this to me." Emma paused. Your parents have called too. Your mother left a message saying she's planning a family dinner to discuss this situation properly. Of course she was. In my mother's world, every crisis could be solved over an elaborate dinner party. But this wasn't something that could be smoothed over with fine wine and forced smiles. Ms. Reynolds, Emma interrupted my thoughts. The Sterling and Pierce board is waiting in the main conference room, and your sister is in the lobby. I straightened my Armani suit. No more Target dresses now that my cover was blown. Send the board up. Let Sophia wait. The next hour was spent finalizing the Sterling and Pierce acquisition. The board members, who had only known me as the mysterious CEO of Atlas Financial, now treated me with a mixture of respect and fear. They had no choice. Atlas Financial now owned 67% of their company. Finally, I nodded to Emma. Send Sophia up. My sister burst into my office like a hurricane in designer clothes. She stopped short at the sight of my expansive office, her eyes widening as she took in the elegant furniture, the priceless art, and the commanding view of Manhattan. This is impossible, she whispered. Clearly not, I replied calmly, not bothering to stand. Did you need something, Sophia? She whirled to face me, her composure cracking. Need something? You bought my company. You've been lying to us for years, playing poor little Olivia with her pathetic little shop, while secretly, building an empire? I supplied. Yes, I did. And I didn't lie. I just let you believe what you wanted to believe. But why? She demanded. Why hide it? Why let us think you were a failure? I leaned back in my chair, studying my sister carefully. Because you needed to. You, Mom, Dad, you all needed to believe I was less successful than you. It made you feel better about yourselves. That's not true. No. I pulled up some files on my computer. Let's see. In the past 5 years, you've mentioned my little shop exactly 147 times in family gatherings. Mom has suggested I get a real job 89 times, and you've used the words wasted potential in reference to me at least 50 times. Sophia's face flushed. You've been keeping count? I keep track of everything, Sophia. It's how I built this company. It's how I knew Sterling and Pierce would be the perfect acquisition. And it's how I knew exactly when to reveal the truth. She sank into one of my visitor chairs, her designer dress crumpling. So what happens now? Are you going to fire me? I smiled. Fire you? No, Sophia. I'm promoting you. Her head snapped up. What? You're good at your job, I acknowledged. Your division has shown consistent growth. I'm making you Executive Vice President of Global Operations. Hope flickered across her face. Really? With one condition. I leaned forward. You report directly to me. Every decision, every major move, it goes through me first. Think you can handle having your little sister as your boss? The hope in her eyes dimmed slightly. For the first time in our lives, the power dynamic had shifted completely. No more mockery, no more condescension. Now she had to answer to the sister she'd spent years looking down on. I'll need to think about it, she managed. Take all the time you need, I replied smoothly. The position is open until tomorrow morning. After that, I'll find someone else. She stood up shakily, smoothing her dress with trembling hands. As she reached the door, she paused. Olivia, that vintage shop, why keep it? Now that everyone knows the truth. Because I like it, I said simply. It reminds me of where I started, and it keeps me grounded. Success isn't just about corner offices and billion-dollar deals, Sophia. Sometimes it's about staying true to yourself, even when everyone else thinks you're wrong. After she left, Emma brought in my afternoon schedule. Your parents' dinner invitation. Should I decline? I thought about it for a moment. The old Olivia would have made an excuse, avoided the confrontation. But I wasn't hiding anymore. Accept it, I decided. But make sure they know I'll be coming directly from the office. Let's see how they handle having the real me at their dinner table. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and calls. News of the Sterling and Pierce acquisition had hit the financial world like a bomb. Atlas Financial Group was now officially one of the most powerful firms on Wall Street, and I was no longer the shadowy figure behind it. As I prepared to leave for my parents' dinner, I received one final message from Sophia. I accept the position, but this isn't over. I smiled, slipping my phone into my designer bag. Of course it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. My family had spent years underestimating me, dismissing my choices, mocking my supposed failure. Now they would learn exactly what I was capable of. The vintage shop in Brooklyn might have been my cover story, but Atlas Financial was my true legacy. And now that my family knew the truth, it was time to show them just how far their disappointing daughter had really come. I stepped into my private elevator, heading down to where my driver waited. Tonight's dinner would be interesting. No more hiding. No more pretending to be less than I was. It was time for my family to meet the real Olivia Reynolds, CEO of Atlas Financial Group and owner of half of Wall Street. And something told me they weren't ready for what that really meant. My driver pulled up to my parents' townhouse precisely at 7. This time, I didn't try to blend in. My Channel suit and Louboutin heels announced exactly who I was. Not the daughter they dismissed for years, but the powerful CEO I'd become. The family butler, who now knew I could buy and sell this house 100 times over, opened the door with a deep bow. Ms. Reynolds, your family is waiting in the dining room. I could hear heated whispers as I approached. They fell silent when I entered. My mother, father, and Sophia sat around the massive dining table, looking like they'd been caught plotting something, which, knowing them, they probably had. "Olivia," my mother managed, her voice strained. "You look different. Amazing what wearing your real clothes can do," I replied, taking my seat. "No more Target dresses needed." My father cleared his throat. "We've been discussing the situation, and we think—" "The situation?" I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "You mean my success? My company? The fact that I'm now Safia's boss?" "About that," Safia cut in, "I've been thinking about the position you offered." "The position isn't negotiable," I said firmly. "You either accept it on my terms, or you find somewhere else to work. Though good luck explaining to other firms why you left a promotion at Atlas Financial." My mother's hands fluttered nervously with her napkin. "Darling, there's no need to be so aggressive. We're family." "Family?" I laughed softly. "Was it family when you mocked my little shop for years? When you compared me to Safia at every opportunity? When you told everyone who would listen that I'd wasted my Harvard degree?" "We were trying to motivate you," my father argued, "to push you to achieve more." "No," I corrected him. "You were trying to force me into your version of success. But here's what you never understood. I had my own plan. While you were focused on titles and appearances, I was building something real." The first course arrived, expensive wine, perfect salmon, all designed to smooth over family tensions. But I wasn't interested in pretending anymore. "Do you know why I kept the vintage shop?" I asked, watching them pick at their food. It wasn't just a cover. It was a reminder of what really matters. While you were all chasing status and recognition, I was learning about real value, about seeing worth in things others overlooked. "But why hide it?" my mother pressed. "Why let us believe you were struggling?" "Because you needed to," I said simply. "Your whole worldview depended on having someone to look down on. The successful parents, the perfect daughters Safia, and poor struggling Olivia. It made you feel better about yourselves." Sophia flinched. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I pulled out my phone, opened my notes. "Would you like me to read some of your comments from the past few years? The ones about my waste of potential? Or maybe the time you told your friends I was still finding myself while you were building a real career?" "Enough," my father interrupted. "What do you want, Olivia? Money? Power? You clearly have both now." I set down my fork, looked each of them in the eye. "What I want is acknowledgement, not of my success. I don't need your validation for that. I want you to acknowledge how you treated me, how you belittled my choices, dismissed my path, and made me feel less than because I didn't follow your script." Silence fell over the table. My mother's carefully applied makeup couldn't hide her discomfort. My father's usual authority seemed to have deserted him. And Safia, she looked lost, her world turned upside down. Finally, my father spoke. We were wrong." "Yes," I agreed. "You were. But you have to understand," my mother jumped in. "We only wanted what was best for you." "No," I corrected her gently. "You wanted what looked best to others. There's a difference." I stood up, smoothing my designer suit. "I have an early meeting tomorrow. Atlas Financial is acquiring another firm, one that makes Sterling and Pierce look small in comparison. Safia, I expect you in my office at 8 sharp. We have a lot of work to do." "Olivia, please," my mother called as I turned to leave. "Can't we just go back to the way things were?" I paused at the door. "No, we can't. But we can move forward if you're willing to accept me as I am. Not as you wish I was. And if we can't, my father asked quietly, then you'll miss out on knowing who I really am, I replied. Your choice. I left them sitting there, surrounded by their expensive dinner and shattered assumptions. My driver was waiting outside, ready to take me back to my penthouse apartment. Rough night? He asked, seeing my expression. Actually, I smiled. It was perfect. The next morning, I arrived at my office to find Sophia already waiting. She looked different, humbler somehow, without her usual armor of superiority. I've been thinking, she said before I could speak, about everything you said last night. You were right. I gestured for her to continue. I was jealous, she admitted. Not of your success. I didn't know about that, but of your confidence, your ability to follow your own path without caring what anyone thought. I always needed their approval. And now I'd like to learn from you. Really learn, not just accept the promotion. If you're willing to teach me. I studied my sister, seeing for the first time, not my lifelong rival, but someone who might actually be ready to grow. First lesson, I said, sitting down at my desk. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Over the next few months, things changed. Not dramatically. Years of family dynamics don't disappear overnight. But slowly, steadily, the relationships shifted. My parents stopped trying to micromanage my life and actually started listening when I spoke. My mother replaced her subtle digs with genuine questions about my business. My father began asking for my advice on investments. Sophia worked harder than I'd ever seen her, learning the real meaning of success. She still struggled sometimes with reporting to her younger sister, but she was trying. That counted for something. The vintage shop in Brooklyn, I kept it, spending Saturday afternoons there when I needed a break from being CEO. It remained my sanctuary, a reminder of where I came from and what I'd built. 1 year after that fateful Christmas dinner, I hosted the family holiday party in my penthouse apartment. No more pretense, no more hiding, no more uncomfortable digs about my career choices. As I watched my family mingle with New York's financial elite, I caught Sophia speaking to a junior analyst. My sister, she was saying, taught me that real success isn't about titles or appearances. It's about building something meaningful, something true to who you are. I smiled, sipping my champagne. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving people wrong. Sometimes it's about showing them a better way to be right. The vintage shop's bell still rings every day, its small space filled with carefully curated pieces and stories waiting to be discovered. And 50 floors above it, in a gleaming office tower, sits the empire that proves success comes in many forms. You just have to be brave enough to follow your own path, even when everyone else thinks you're lost. As I looked out over the city lights that night, I realized something important. My family had spent years trying to fix what they saw as my failures, never realizing that their definition of success was what needed fixing all along. Now they knew the truth, not just about my business empire, but about the strength it takes to stay true to yourself in a world that constantly tries to make you someone else. And that, more than any amount of money or power, was the real measure of my success. I stood in the doorway of my Aunt Catherine's lavish home, watching the annual Thanksgiving chaos unfold. The mansion's grand foyer was decorated with elaborate autumn arrangements, the air heavy with the scent of turkey and expensive perfume. This was the Morrison family's yearly display of wealth and status, a tradition I'd grown to despise. Olivia, My cousin Madison's shrill voice cut through the noise. "You're actually here. We weren't sure you'd come, given your circumstances." I forced a polite smile, smoothing down my deliberately understated dress. If only they knew that my circumstances included being CEO of Sterling Enterprises, the parent company that had quietly acquired Morrison Technologies 3 months ago. "The kids' table is that way," Aunt Catherine called out, not bothering to hide her smirk. "Though I suppose that's where you belong, given your position in life." At 32, I was the family's designated failure. The one who'd walked away from the prestigious family business to strike out on my own. Little did they know that my tiny consulting business was actually a cover for my role as the reclusive founder of Sterling Enterprises. "Thanks, Aunt Catherine," I said quietly, watching her turn back to fawning over Madison's new Cartier bracelet, probably bought with her Morrison Technologies salary, which I now technically paid. The kids' table was exactly as depressing as expected. A rickety card table set up in the corner, far from the elegant main dining room. I took my seat among my young cousins, some barely in their teens, while watching the successful adults gather around the main table. "Poor Olivia," I heard my Uncle James stage whisper to my mother. "Still hasn't found her way, has she? Good thing the rest of us know how to succeed in business." My mother sighed dramatically. "We tried to tell her to stay at Morrison Technologies, but she had to be different, had to chase her silly dreams." I bit back a laugh, thinking about the meeting scheduled for Monday morning. The one where Morrison Technologies employees would discover that their company had been acquired by Sterling Enterprises months ago. The one where they'd learn that their jobs, their salaries, their precious positions all depended on the woman they'd banished to the kids' table. "Aunt Olivia," my 12-year-old cousin Tommy whispered, "why do they make you sit here? You're a grown-up." I smiled at him, the first genuine smile of the evening. "Because they think success only looks one way, Tommy. They haven't learned that power doesn't always announce itself." "Is that why you're letting them talk about you like that?" His young face was serious. "Even though you're actually their Sha. I pressed a finger to my lips, winking at him. Tommy was the only one who knew my secret. He discovered it by accident when he'd seen my name on some documents while visiting my office. But he kept quiet, understanding instinctively what I was doing. Around the main table, the conversation had turned to business, as it always did. Morrison Technologies had been the family's pride and joy for 3 generations. Now my Uncle James ran it, with my cousins Madison and Tyler in executive positions they hadn't earned. "The company's doing better than ever," James boasted, raising his wine glass. "We're expanding into new markets, hiring more staff. This time next year, we'll be twice the size we are now." I hid my smile behind my water glass. He had no idea that Sterling Enterprises had already begun restructuring plans. By this time next year, half of his executive team would be replaced with actually qualified professionals. "And how's your little consulting business, Olivia?" Madison called out, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Still working from that tiny office downtown?" "Oh, you know." I shrugged. "It pays the bills." "Barely, from what I hear," Tyler snickered. "Maybe if you'd stayed at Morrison Technologies, you'd be sitting at the grown-up table by now." My Aunt Catherine nodded sagely. "It's not too late to admit you made a mistake, dear. I'm sure James could find something entry-level for you. Maybe in the mailroom?" The entire adult table erupted in poorly concealed laughter. I remained quiet, thinking about the documents sitting in my office. The ones that would reveal that Sterling Enterprises, my company, now owned everything they were so proud of. Actually, I said carefully, I have some interesting meetings coming up about the future of my career. Oh, honey. My mother patted my hand condescendingly. Don't get your hopes up. Some people just aren't meant for big success. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from my CFO. Everything's set for Monday's announcement. The papers are ready. Morrison Technologies is officially ours. I looked around the table at my smug relatives, James bragging about his business acumen, Madison showing off her expensive jewelry, Tyler boasting about his corner office. None of them had any idea that their comfortable world was about to be turned upside down. More turkey, Olivia? Aunt Catherine called out mockingly. At least you can eat well at our table, even if you can't succeed like the rest of us. I smiled, thinking about Monday morning. Thank you, Aunt Catherine. I think this Thanksgiving will be very memorable indeed. Tommy caught my eye and grinned. He knew what was coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a side of corporate acquisition papers and a complete restructuring of the family business. The kids' table suddenly felt like the perfect place to watch it all unfold. Monday morning arrived with a crisp November chill. I stood in my private office at Sterling Enterprises, 40 floors above the city, watching the sunrise paint the skyline in shades of gold. In exactly 2 hours, my family's perfect world would shatter. Ms. Andrews? My assistant Sarah appeared at the door. Everyone from Morrison Technologies has arrived for the routine shareholders meeting. They're waiting in the main conference room. I smiled, adjusting my tailored suit. No more understated dresses today. And my family? Your Uncle James is complaining about having to come to Sterling Enterprises. He's saying it's beneath him to meet with, and I quote, some faceless corporation that probably doesn't understand our family values. Perfect. I checked my reflection in the window. Is everything ready? Sarah nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. She'd been with me since the beginning, watching me build Sterling Enterprises while my family mocked my supposed failure. Security is in place. The papers are ready, and the cameras are set up to capture every reaction. Then let's not keep them waiting. The conference room was a sight to behold. Through the glass walls, I could see my family seated around the massive table, James at the head, naturally, with Madison and Tyler flanking him. My mother sat nearby, probably already planning how to brag about this meeting at her next social gathering. They have no idea you're coming, Sarah whispered. Your uncle's been demanding to meet with Mr. Sterling for the past hour. I straightened my shoulders. Well, let's not disappoint him. The room fell silent as I walked in, my heels clicking against the marble floor. For a moment, no one recognized me. They were too busy looking for the male CEO they'd expected. Then Madison's eyes widened. Olivia? What are you doing here? This is a private meeting. Is it? I moved to the head of the table, directly opposite Uncle James. I think you'll find I have every right to be here. Now see here, James began, his face reddening. We're here to meet with Sterling Enterprises CEO. Run along and play with your little consulting business. I sat down, placing a thick folder on the table. Oh, but Uncle James, I am Sterling Enterprises CEO. In fact, I own it. And as of 3 months ago, I own Morrison Technologies too. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear the soft whir of the cameras capturing every shocked expression, every moment of dawning horror. That's impossible, Tyler stammered. Morrison Technologies is a family company. Yes, I agreed pleasantly. And it still is. Just not your family anymore. I opened the folder and began distributing documents. These papers confirmed Sterling Enterprises' acquisition of Morrison Technologies, completed 3 months ago through a series of shell corporations. You all signed off on it, though you were too busy congratulating yourselves to read the fine print. My mother's face had gone pale. But your consulting business was a cover, I smiled. While you were all mocking my tiny office downtown, I was building one of the largest corporate consulting firms in the country. The office you laughed at was just for show. Madison grabbed the papers with trembling hands. This can't be legal. Daddy, do something. James was frantically flipping through the documents, his face growing paler by the second. These are legitimate. We work for Olivia now. Not exactly. I leaned back in my chair. You see, I've been reviewing the company's performance, specifically the executive team's qualifications. It's interesting how many positions were filled based on family connections rather than merit. The color drained from Tyler's face. What are you saying? I'm saying that effective immediately, there will be some changes in management, starting with the executive team. I pressed a button, and the wall screen lit up with a new organizational chart. Madison gasped as she saw her name missing from the VP position she'd held for 3 years. You can't do this, she whispered. We're family. Family? I stood up slowly. Was I family when you made me sit at the kids' table? When you mocked my career? When you treated me like a failure while I was building an empire? James slammed his fist on the table. This is revenge, plain and simple. No, Uncle James. This is business. The same business you claimed I didn't understand. I started walking around the table. Your executive team is underqualified. The company's performance has been declining for years. You've been coasting on the family name while more competent companies passed you by. And now, my mother asked quietly. Now? I stopped behind her chair. Now Morrison Technologies will be run by people who earned their positions. Starting today, all executive positions will be reviewed. Those who are qualified may stay. Those who aren't, I glanced at Madison and Tyler, will be offered positions more suited to their actual skills. You demote your own family. Madison's voice cracked. You mean like how you demoted me to the kids' table? Treated me like a child playing at business? I smiled. Consider this a lesson in real corporate management. I nodded to Sarah, who began distributing another set of papers. These are your new contracts. You have until the end of the day to decide if you want to stay with the company in your new positions. If not, severance packages are included. And if we refuse, James challenged, though his voice lacked its usual authority, then you can leave now. But I should mention, non-compete clauses are in effect. And given that Sterling Enterprises owns most of the major consulting firms in the region, I let the implication hang in the air. The room was silent except for the sound of shuffling papers and muffled sobs from Madison. My mother sat frozen, probably calculating how this would affect her social standing. Oh, and one more thing, I added, pausing at the door. Next year's Thanksgiving dinner will be held at my house. I have plenty of room at the main table, for those who still have jobs to be thankful for. As I walked out, I heard Tyler's shaky voice. Did she just own us? Sarah fell into step beside me as we headed back to my office. That was quite something. Are you okay? I looked down at my phone, where a text from young Tommy had just appeared. Did you do it? Did you show them? I'm perfect, I replied to Sarah. Sometimes the best seat in the house is at the kids' table. You get to watch all the grown-ups' mistakes without having to pretend they're successes. The real work was just beginning: restructuring Morrison Technologies, implementing proper management practices, turning it into the company it should have been all along. But for now, I savored the moment. After all, revenge doesn't always come with cranberry sauce. Sometimes it comes with corporate letterhead and a complete reorganization chart. The weeks following the revelation were exactly what I expected: a storm of desperate calls, manipulation attempts, and increasingly panicked family meetings. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. "Olivia, darling, we need to discuss this as a family." "Mom, you can't destroy your own family's legacy." "Uncle James, please, we can work something out." "Madison." I let them all go to voicemail while I focused on restructuring Morrison Technologies. The business news was having a field day. Morrison Technologies undergoes major management overhaul. FAMILY DRAMA leads to corporate shake-up. Hidden CEO reveal IDENTITY and dramatic family confrontation. 1 month after the revelation, I sat in my office reviewing the latest performance reports when Sarah appeared at my door. "Your cousin Madison is here," she said. "No appointment, but she looks different." I glanced at the security feed. Madison stood in the lobby, but she wasn't the perfectly polished executive I remembered. Her designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple business suit. Her usual arrogant expression was missing. Send her up, I decided. Madison walked into my office like a stranger, taking in the space with new eyes. "Nice view," she said quietly. "Better than my old office. Though I suppose that's not saying much anymore." "What do you want, Madison?" She sank into a visitor's chair. "I took the job. The junior analyst position you offered." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? I thought you said you'd rather die than start at the bottom." "I did." She laughed without humor. "Then I tried applying at other firms. Turns out when you remove the Morrison name and connection, my resume is lacking." "Shocking." "I deserve that," she admitted. "I deserve all of this. She hesitated. "I want to learn. Actually learn, not just coast by on the family name." I studied her carefully. "Why should I believe you?" "Because you were right." Her voice cracked slightly. "About everything. About earning our positions. About real business skills. I've been reading the company reports since you took over. Our performance has improved more in 1 month than in the last 3 years under Dad. Speaking of Uncle James," I leaned back in my chair. "How is he handling early retirement?" Madison grimaced. "Not well. He's drinking a lot, talking about family betrayal. Mom's social circle is in shambles. Turns out people aren't so impressed by our name anymore." "And Tyler?" "Took the severance package. Said he'd rather start fresh somewhere else than work his way up here." She paused. "He's having trouble finding anything above entry level." I nodded, unsurprised. "That's what happens when your only qualification is your last name." "I know that now." Madison looked down at her hands. "I've been thinking about Thanksgiving. About all the times we made you sit at the kids' table, treated you like you were beneath us. We were so busy looking down on you that we didn't see you rising above us." Just then, my office door burst open. Uncle James stumbled in, ignoring Sarah's protests. The smell of expensive scotch wafted in with him. "You," he slurred, pointing at me. "You destroyed everything." "No, Uncle James." I remained seated, watching him sway. You destroyed everything. Years of nepotism, of prioritizing family connections over competence. I just exposed it. We're blood, he shouted. That used to mean something. It still does. I stood up slowly. But blood doesn't qualify you to run a company. Skill does. Experience does. Actually knowing what you're doing does. James. My mother's voice cut through as she rushed in after him. Stop making a scene. I almost laughed at her instinctive concern for appearances. Still worried about the family image, Mom. Even now. She deflated slightly, looking suddenly older. Everything's changed, Olivia. The country club, our social circle, even our neighbors look at us differently now. Because they're seeing you clearly for the first time, I said quietly. Just like you're finally seeing me. Madison stood up. Dad, you're embarrassing yourself. This isn't helping anything. James turned on her. You, working as a junior analyst, a Morrison, starting at the bottom. Yes, she said firmly, because that's where I should have started in the first place, where we all should have started. I watched this exchange with interest. Maybe Madison really was starting to understand. Get him out of here, I told Sarah. And call him a car. He's in no condition to drive. After security escorted James out, my mother lingered. Was all this really necessary, Olivia? The takeover, the demotions, the public humiliation. Was it necessary to treat me like a failure for 10 years? I countered. To mock my career, belittle my choices, make me sit at the kids' table while you all congratulated yourselves on success you hadn't earned. She had no answer for that. The company is doing better now, I continued. Real executives in leadership positions. Actual qualifications required for promotion. If you don't believe me, check the quarterly reports. And the family? She asked quietly. That depends on you. All of you. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it because it was good business. What happens next is up to you. After they left, I stood at my window, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk fell. My phone buzzed with a message from Tommy. Hey, Aunt Olivia. Mom says I can come work at your office after school sometimes. She says I need to learn business the right way. Is that okay? I smiled, thinking about the next generation of the Morrison family. Maybe some good would come from all this after all. 1 year later, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner at my penthouse. The table settings were elegant, but not ostentatious. Success doesn't need to shout to be heard. Madison was there, having earned a promotion to senior analyst through actual hard work. Tommy came too, proud to show off what he'd learned during his after-school office visits. Even my mother attended, though she was quieter now, more thoughtful. Uncle James and Tyler didn't come. Some people can't accept change, can't admit their mistakes. But those who could, those who were willing to learn and grow, found their places at my table. You know what I'm thankful for? Madison said during dinner. Second chances. And learning what real success looks like. I raised my glass, thinking about how far we'd come. To real success, I toasted, and to earning your seat at the table. Tommy grinned at me from across the table. No kids' table this year, Aunt Olivia? No, I smiled back. Just one table. For people who understand that true worth isn't in your name or your connections. It's in what you build for yourself. And that, more than any corporate takeover or family drama, was the real victory. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in destroying what others built. It's in building something better yourself. The kids' table was gone, but its lesson remained. Sometimes those they look down on the most rise the highest. And sometimes the best view of success comes from starting at the bottom. As for the Morrison family legacy, it's stronger than ever, just not in the way they expected. And that's something to be truly thankful for. The text message from my mother arrived 3 days before Christmas, just as I was finishing up a major acquisition deal in my office. Emma, darling, about Christmas dinner. Perhaps it's better if you don't come this year. Your sister Olivia is bringing her new fiancé. He's a state senator, you know, and we need to maintain a certain image. You understand, right? Love, Mom. I stared at my phone, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Even after all these years, after everything I'd accomplished, I was still the family disappointment. Sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor of the Astor building, overlooking the Manhattan skyline, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. My mother had no idea that the struggling consultant she was so ashamed of was actually the CEO of Summit Industries, one of the largest consulting firms in North America. Miss Parker? My assistant Sarah's voice came through the intercom. The board is ready for the global tech acquisition call. Thank you, Sarah. I straightened my designer suit. Not that anyone in my family would recognize it as such. They still thought I shopped at discount stores. As I prepared for the call, my mind drifted back to where this all began. 10 years ago, I had stood in our family's living room, trying to explain my decision to leave my prestigious junior analyst position at my father's company. "You're throwing away everything we built for you," Dad had shouted, his face red with anger. "And for what? To start your own business? Don't be ridiculous." My sister Olivia had sat on the expensive leather couch, smirking. She was already a rising star at Parker Financial, our father's company, following the path that had been laid out for her since birth. "Emma's always been the rebellious one," she'd said with fake sympathy. "She just doesn't understand how the real business world works." Oh, how wrong they'd been. While they thought I was struggling with a small consulting practice, I was actually building Summit Industries from the ground up. I worked 18-hour days, sacrificed every comfort, and poured every penny I had into my company. And now, Summit Industries was worth billions, though we operated so quietly that most people had no idea who owned us, including my family, including Parker Financial. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. "Miss Parker?" Sarah entered with a stack of documents. "The final contracts from Parker Financial just arrived. They're ready for your signature." Ah, yes, the contract. The delicious irony of it all. Parker Financial, my father's pride and joy, had been desperately trying to secure a partnership with Summit Industries for months. They had no idea they were essentially begging for their prodigal daughter's approval. I picked up my phone and reread my mother's text. "Need to maintain a certain image." My laptop pinged with a new email from Olivia. "Emma, heard Mom texted you about Christmas. Don't take it personally. You know how important appearances are to her. Besides, Senator Richards is very particular about the company he keeps. It's really better this way. Maybe once you've made something of yourself, you can join us again. Liv." I set my phone down and looked at the stack of contracts on my desk. The partnership would be worth millions to Parker Financial. They were counting on it to fund their expansion into international markets. My father had been bragging about it for weeks, according to my sources, and all it needed was my signature. Sarah appeared in the doorway again. Your father's on line 1. He wants to discuss the contract signing ceremony. I picked up the phone, adopting the professionally distant tone I always used when dealing with Parker Financial. Emma Mitchell speaking. I used my mother's maiden name in business specifically to avoid detection. Ms. Mitchell. My father's voice was eager, ingratiating, so different from the dismissive tone he used with his younger daughter. I just wanted to confirm everything's set for the signing ceremony tomorrow. This partnership means everything to our company. I thought about Christmas dinner, about Olivia's smug email, about years of being treated like a failure. Actually, Mr. Parker, I said smoothly, I've been reviewing the contracts and I have some concerns. Concerns? I could hear the panic creeping into his voice. What concerns? Everything was approved by your board. Things change, I replied. Perhaps we should discuss this in person. Why don't you bring your family to the signing ceremony tomorrow? After all, Parker Financial is a family company, isn't it? Yes, of course. I'll bring everyone. My wife, my daughter Olivia. All your daughters. I corrected him firmly. Oh. His voice dimmed slightly. Well, Emma's not really involved in the business. All your daughters, Mr. Parker, I repeated, or there will be no signing ceremony. After he agreed and hung up, I sat back in my chair, gazing out at the city lights. Tomorrow, my family would walk into my office expecting to meet the mysterious CEO of Summit Industries. Instead, they would come face to face with their greatest disappointment. Sarah appeared one last time. Shall I prepare the conference room for tomorrow's event? I smiled, fingering the contract papers on my desk. Yes, and Sarah? Make sure the photographers are ready. I want to capture every moment when they realize exactly who they've been dealing with. As night fell over Manhattan, I stayed in my office, planning every detail of tomorrow's revelation. My family wanted to maintain a certain image. Well, they were about to learn what real success looked like, and Christmas dinner would never be the same again. The morning of the contract signing, I arrived at the office 2 hours early. The conference room on the 47th floor had been meticulously prepared. Fresh flowers arranged on gleaming mahogany tables, elegant place cards marking each seat, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Manhattan's skyline. Your family just arrived in the lobby, Sarah informed me, her expression carefully neutral. She'd been with me since the beginning, one of the few people who knew the whole truth. Should I send them up? I checked my reflection in the window. Gone was the deliberately understated clothing I wore around my family. Today, I wore a crisp Armani suit, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's vintage Cartier watch, the only inheritance she'd left me, along with her belief in my potential. No, I replied, smoothing my jacket. Had them wait. I want to make an entrance. 20 minutes later, I stood in my private elevator, watching the floor numbers tick upward. My phone buzzed, another text from my mother. Emma, where are you? Your father says it's crucial you attend this meeting. Don't embarrass us by being late. I smiled, slipping the phone back into my pocket as the elevator doors opened. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them all. My father pacing nervously, my mother fixing Olivia's already perfect hair, and my sister preening in her reflection, probably rehearsing her most ingratiating smile for the mysterious CEO. Senator Richards, Olivia's fiancé, sat examining the contract papers with an expression of barely concealed boredom. He'd never met me. Olivia had made sure of that, but he was about to. I nodded to Sarah, who opened the conference room doors. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "Ms. Emma Mitchell, CEO of Summit Industries." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning as I walked into the room, my heels clicking deliberately against the marble floor. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the polished table. My father's face had gone from red to white in seconds. But it was Olivia's expression that I would remember forever. Pure, unadulterated shock as her carefully constructed world of superiority crumbled around her. "Hello, family," I said calmly, taking my seat at the head of the table. "Shall we begin?" This is impossible," my father stammered. "You're a small-time consultant." "Am I?" I opened the folder in front of me. Interesting. Because according to these documents, I'm the CEO of the company you've been desperately trying to partner with for the past 6 months. The senator cleared his throat, looking between me and his shell-shocked fiancée. "I'm sorry. What exactly is happening here?" "Oh, forgive my sister's rudeness." I smiled sweetly at Olivia. She should have introduced us at Christmas dinner. But wait, I wasn't invited, was I? Something about maintaining a certain image. My mother found her voice. "Emma, darling, there's been a terrible misunderstanding." "Has there?" I cut her off, my voice sharp. "Let's review, shall we?" I pressed a button on the conference table, and the wall screen lit up with a series of emails and text messages. Here's you telling me I'm not successful enough to attend family gatherings. Here's Olivia suggesting I'm an embarrassment to the family name. And here, I paused for effect, is Dad practically begging for this partnership, completely unaware he was negotiating with his disappointing younger daughter. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah quietly distributed copies of the contract, or rather, what remained of it. My father flipped through the pages frantically. These aren't the same terms we discussed." "No," I agreed pleasantly. "They're not. You see, I've had time to reconsider this partnership. In fact, I've had years to consider exactly how I wanted this moment to play out." Olivia, finally finding her voice, leaned forward. "You can't do this. Daddy's been planning this expansion for months. The board is counting on it." I turned to her, letting my smile fade. "You mean like how I counted on my family's support when I was building my company from nothing? Like how I counted on being treated with basic respect at family gatherings?" "That was different," my mother protested weakly. "We were just trying to protect you from disappointment." "No," I cut her off. "You were protecting your image, your precious social standing. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded in creating exactly the image you wanted. The whole business world will know exactly who the Parkers are after today." I stood up, smoothing my jacket. "The partnership deal is off. Summit Industries will be acquiring Global Tech directly, which, as I'm sure Dad has realized by now, will effectively block Parker Financial from expanding into the international market." My father slumped in his chair, the full implications hitting him. Without this partnership, without the expansion it would have funded, Parker Financial would remain exactly what it was, a mid-sized regional firm, forever in the shadow of Summit Industries. "You can't do this," he whispered. "We're family." I paused at the door, turning back one last time. "Family? That's interesting, because according to the text messages I received yesterday, I'm not successful enough to be part of this family. I wonder." I pretended to think for a moment. "Will I be successful enough for Christmas dinner now?" The silence that followed me out was deafening. Through the glass walls, I could see my mother dabbing at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief, my father staring blankly at the contract papers, and Olivia, perfect, successful Olivia, slumped in her chair, her carefully constructed world lying in pieces around her. Sarah fell into step beside me as I walked back to my office. "That was quite a show," she said quietly. "Are you okay?" I looked down at my phone, where another desperate text from my mother was flashing. "Cancel the Christmas dinner," I replied, a small smile playing at my lips. "I have other plans." The true fallout was just beginning, and I had a feeling the holidays were about to get very interesting indeed. The aftermath of the contract signing was exactly what I expected. A hurricane of desperate calls, manipulative messages, and increasingly panicked attempts at reconciliation. My phone buzzed constantly. "Emma, sweetheart, we need to talk about this as a family. Mom, you're destroying everything I built. Dad, can't we discuss this like rational business people? Olivia." I ignored them all while Summit Industries proceeded with the global tech acquisition. Without the partnership, Parker Financial's stock price began to drop. The business news was ruthless. Parker Financial, Lois ESCRUCYAL Uncanny HI BUHIG Summit Industries FANILYDRAMA behind failed MERGER Parker stock PLUNET as international expansion PANSEOLNATS. 1 week after the failed signing, I sat in my office reviewing the latest acquisition reports when Sarah appeared at my door. "Your sister's here again," she said. "Third time this week, but this time she's alone. No senator fiancé." I glanced at the security feed on my laptop. Olivia stood in the lobby, but something was different. Gone was her usual perfectly polished appearance. She looked tired. "Send her up," I said after a moment's consideration. Olivia walked into my office like a stranger, her eyes taking in the expansive space, the view, the clear symbols of success she'd never noticed in her failing sister. "Nice office," she said quietly. "Bigger than mine at Parker Financial. Though I suppose that's not saying much anymore." "What do you want, Olivia?" She sank into one of the visitor chairs. Senator Richards called off the engagement. I raised an eyebrow. Really? The perfect power couple didn't survive a little financial setback. He said he couldn't be associated with a failing family business. She laughed bitterly. Apparently, I'm not successful enough for his image. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Dad's drinking again," she continued. "The board is questioning his leadership. Mom's social circle is buzzing with gossip. Everything's falling apart, and it's all because of me?" I interrupted. "No, Olivia. It's falling apart because it was built on appearances rather than substance, just like your engagement." She flinched. "I deserved that." "You deserved a lot more than that." I leaned forward. "Do you know what it was like, watching you all celebrate each other's successes while treating me like a failure? Having Mom plan elaborate parties for your promotions while she couldn't even remember what my company was called. We thought you were struggling. You never asked." I stood up, anger finally breaking through my carefully maintained composure. "Not once in 10 years did any of you actually ask about my work. You were too busy looking down on me to notice I had surpassed all of you." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks, real ones this time, not the calculated drops she usually produced for effect. I was horrible to you. Yes, you were. Can you ever forgive me? I studied her for a long moment. Forgiveness isn't the issue, Olivia. Trust is, and trust has to be earned. Just then, my office door burst open. My parents rushed in, ignoring Sarah's protests. Emma. My father's voice boomed, though it lacked its usual authority. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. Hi. I remained seated, watching them. At what point would that be? That you're successful, my mother said quickly. That we were wrong about you. We understand now, darling. You can stop punishing us. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think this is about punishment? About proving my success? I stood up, walking to the window. This is about consequences, about finally showing you that your actions, your dismissal, your condescension, your casual cruelty, have real effects. We're your parents, my father said, his voice breaking slightly. Everything we did was to protect you. No, I turned back to face them. Everything you did was to protect your image. Well, congratulations. Your image is now exactly what you've made it. A failing company, a broken engagement, and a family in crisis. What do you want from us? Olivia asked quietly. Want? I considered the question. I wanted your support when I was building my company. I wanted your respect when I succeeded. I wanted to be treated like a daughter instead of an embarrassment. I paused. But now, I don't want anything from you. My mother began to cry, but I'd seen too many of her performances to be moved. Please, Emma, it's almost Christmas. Ah, yes, Christmas. I smiled coldly. The dinner I wasn't successful enough to attend. Tell me, do you still need to maintain a certain image for the senator? Or has that requirement changed now that he's abandoned ship? My father stepped forward. Name your price. Whatever you want. Board seats. Shares in Parker Financial. You still don't get it, do you? I shook my head. I don't want anything you have. Summit Industries is worth more than Parker Financial could ever be. What I wanted was a family who valued me for who I am, not what I could offer them. I pressed a button on my desk, and Sarah appeared instantly. Please show them out, and have security update the no-entry list. Emma, please. My mother tried one last time. We can fix this. No, Mom. You can't fix 10 years of dismissal and disrespect with one tearful apology. Actions have consequences. Consider this your lesson in real business. After they left, I sat in my office as darkness fell over the city. My phone buzzed with a message, not from my family this time, but from my grandmother's old friend Margaret, who had supported me when I was first starting Summit Industries. Heard about what happened with your family. Your grandmother would be proud. Christmas dinner at my place this year? I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Sometimes family isn't about blood. It's about who believes in you when no one else does. The next morning, I called a board meeting at Summit Industries. It was time to announce our next major move, a complete overhaul of the consulting industry, starting with the acquisition of several regional firms. Parker Financial wasn't on the list. As I stood before my board, outlining our expansion plans, I thought about my family's Christmas dinner happening without me. They would sit around their expensive table, picking at their perfect meal, trying to maintain their precious image. Meanwhile, I would be building something real, something lasting, not just a successful company, but a life where I never had to pretend to be less than I am. A week later, a small package arrived at my office. Inside was my grandmother's old business card holder with a note from Margaret, She always said you'd outshine them all. Looks like she was right. I placed the card holder on my desk, a reminder that success isn't about who accepts you at your peak, but who believed in you from the beginning. My family had wanted to maintain a certain image. Well, they got their wish, just not the image they'd hoped for. And me, I finally had exactly the image I'd earned. Successful, powerful, and completely free from their expectations. The next time someone asked about my family, I simply smiled and said, I have a company to run. Because in the end, that was worth more than any Christmas dinner they could offer.